How are you doing, green industry business leaders? This is episode number 2 of the Green Industry Profits podcast, where we talk about how green industry companies can grow in a profitable way. In today's episode, we had a conversation with Scott Molchan of the Million Dollar Landscaper. We dive into the biggest challenges he is seeing in the industry, pricing jobs the right way, building administrative processes, sales strategies, and much more. And before we dive into the episode, just a quick note that this podcast is brought to you by Cycle CPA, a remote accounting firm that works specifically with green industry businesses. For more information, go to cyclecpa.com. And without further ado, let's get into the episode today. All right, so super excited for this next episode here. We got Scott Molchan with the Million Dollar Landscaper. I think I first really kind of found out about Scott and also Katie with the Million Dollar Landscape with their Facebook group, the landscaping business owners, which is awesome stuff. A lot of people with some good conversations in that group. So if you're not in it, definitely join. But Scott does coaching and a lot for the green industry as well. So thank you very much for joining us here, Scott.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be on here, and congratulations on starting the podcast. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. So we enjoyed being on yours. So we
Yeah,
were like, listen, I think this seems like a good thing just to meet some new people and just to catch up with people like yourself as well. So but to kind of get into things here, Scott, you mind giving the community a little overview of your background, how you got into the industry, and then ultimately how you went into the coaching aspect?
sure. So my dad started the business back in 1988. Actually, prior to that, before that, he started working for other companies, and he's like, you know what, I'm going on his own. So he started his own landscape business, and that was I was in middle school then, and just started working on the weekends and summers and stuff like that. So I kind of progressed my way through. And then a little after high school, I started doing more and more of the business side of things. Just kind of, I moved up to the vice president position, and we did all kinds of landscaping. My dad started doing just a little bit of everything all the time. And then when I started to become vice president, we started to kind of niche down a little bit more. We started focusing on more higher end residential. We started doing more hardscaping and water features of those things. We also had a commercial lawn care and snow plowing side of things as well. But so I kind of grew up my pretty much most of my life in the landscaping realm of things. But one thing I did notice when we started getting into understanding more of the business side of things and started really taking a look at the numbers is like, wow, we're not making much money. We're winning on some jobs, we're losing on some other jobs, and we seem to work our butts off all year long and then not have a whole lot to show for it at the end of the year. And like, this isn't good. And my wife Katie came in, started working the business. We're expecting our first child. It's like, wow, this is starting to click. Like, we have to make a change here, and this isn't good. And so we started really looking at numbers, and we actually reached out to our accountant, and not to knock the accountant, but he was not very helpful. Like, he would just, oh, you got to charge more, you got to do this, and like, okay, well, why? How do we do this? And they weren't very good at explaining things. So we started to kind of like gather as much information we could. I started going to different webinars and shows and stuff, like, to kind of date myself. There used to be, now there's the GIE or thing show now, but it used to be called Mid-Am Show. It used to be up in Chicago. It was like one of the biggest shows. So it was relatively close to us. We'd go up there, and instead of like going and looking at all the cool equipment, I'd start, being the nerd I am, I'm going to go listen to all the different presentations and try to, better our business. And I started learning a little bit more about different types of estimating systems that were out there that just I wasn't aware of. Is before, my dad would just go out, do an estimate, and that's how he taught me. It was take the materials, multiply by 2 or 3 or whatever it was there, and it just wasn't working for us. So we actually hired a business consultant. They came in and started kind of going through our numbers and kind of outlining things. And to be honest with you, I didn't understand everything he was telling me. I have a degree in computer networking. I didn't necessarily understand all the business side of things and all the terminology that they're going through, but we kind of managed through and getting through that. And I started reading more and started just kind of talking more and more people. And we started kind of understanding, like, oh, we're not charging enough. We're not covering our overhead. We're not covering all our equipment costs. It was really a eye opener when we started doing that. Um, I also started working with a landscape business consultant that's out in the realm still. He does an amazing job. But one of the things they kept telling me was to make more money, just go do more sales, do more sales. Well, but if we weren't charging enough, it didn't really matter because we weren't charging enough. We weren't making no money. I was just busy. And, but until we started really applying all those things, we started learning about our numbers and learning how to price our work. And that's when our business started turning around. It was until that point, because then we could start hiring better people. We can start getting better equipment and keeping our people happy. We're able to kind of choose the jobs we wanted to. And it wasn't until, like I said, we started diving in our numbers that made a big difference for us. But yeah, so I pretty much kind of go back to your question. Yeah, I grew up in the industry. We went through a lot of hard times before we started making things better, but it just diving in and learning our numbers was a huge change for our business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It could definitely cause a good shift, once you dial in there with the numbers aspect of things. Now, I heard you mentioned, you kind of made a shift to focus more on the high-end residential as part of some of the services. I guess when you're working with companies, are you seeing any specific service lines or avenues that you would recommend for companies to kind of get into?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of lawn maintenance just because, well, it's hard to make money. There's so many people that come in this industry and they start mowing and it's just very hard to make money on it because there's always somebody lower than you. And you're going to get, I mean, obviously you get the customers that want to pay for the higher end where you're doing the full blown service on the properties. But that realm is not, to me, it's very hard, very difficult. And I see many people kind of shifting away from that and getting into more design build type of services. Um, we really transitioned from, we did a lot of work originally for contractors and home builders and stuff. We like literally would go and do whole subdivisions, sodding, basic landscaping services. And that was around 2008 when the recession started hitting. And it was like, wow, the builders are slowing down. Like we have to make a change in our business. And that's what we started looking. Well, the higher end residential area, they're still having to pay for the service. They want their, properties kept up really well. So we started working on those type of clients, and oh, they want an outdoor kitchen or they want an outdoor patio, or hey, when they started throwing water features in there, and that was a big eye-opening experience for us. Like, oh, this is a whole nother realm that we never really dove into. And it was kind of more so of a push though from the recession though, because if we stayed doing the commercial side and then the home builder side, we probably wouldn't have been in business very long, or we'd have really struggled. So um, I always kind of push people that are in our program to really think about those types of things, getting into the design build or learning more things. Not necessarily have to go and do patios if you don't want to. That's fine, but look at more of the high end residential. How can you serve those clients more and provide more? Because they're more likely to purchase an upsell. Like if you want to just clean stuff or do whatever on the property, they're more likely to do it than just the regular mow and blow type of customer.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and now with the with some of the clients that you work with, what do you see as some of the common issues that they're facing, when they're initially coming to you, maybe um, within their companies?
A lot of times and it's kind of funny. We were really looking at these numbers that people are coming to us. They've been struggling. They've been working their butts off and they're just getting burned out because they're like, I don't know what to do. They've been talking to whoever and then they're just financially struggling. And that's the biggest thing we see. We also see people, struggling with employees. That's been an ongoing issue since I was little. I remember my dad, discussing the employees issue, but there's things you could do to get around that. But the biggest thing is just really understanding your numbers and understanding what you need to charge and not going off the going rate or not taking the materials multiplied by two. There's so many misconceptions about how to price things out there. Even and not to knock other people, but there's some influencers out there that are not really giving so much the best advice. Now, it's absolutely good if you're just getting started, absolutely, and you have to start somewhere. Don't get me wrong, but you until you take a deep dive and understand your numbers, it's not going to make any difference. And just when we see people going through our program, they start doing that. They're like, wow, I'm having money in my bank. I could do things, I can get better equipment or I can pay people more. So the biggest thing is just they're tired of struggling financially. They're tired of winning on some jobs and losing on others. Like you should be trying to win on every single job. There should be never, it shouldn't be the cycle. If you can keep that cycle steady all the time and going up, it's a win for everybody.
Absolutely. And as for the pricing, because it does start there ultimately. Do you have a method that you prefer over others in regard to your approach with estimating?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of like, it's called an overhead recovery system. And kind of a nutshell, what it is really understanding all the back end costs of running your business. So hiring somebody like Cycle CPA, your attorney, your internet, all those things that you can't necessarily write a bill for your customers to, for understanding what that costs, understanding what your equipment costs, understanding all the labor burden that goes into owning or having those employees. Once you understand all that, those numbers, then you can start charging based on all that information. But if you're just winging it and doing the multiplication method, I call it, you're just crossing your fingers and hoping you're going to make money, and then there's no way to track that. So if you use an overhead recovery system, you can adjust your estimates in the future, like, because everything's based on time. That's what I tell people, that you are selling time. You're selling time to install that plant, you're installing time or taking time to mow, whatever it is. Everything's time based. So once you understand those numbers, you can charge the appropriate amount of time for, with that rate. um, so that's the biggest thing I really recommend, is some kind of overhead recovery system. There's a couple other methods that are out there. The overhead profit per hour, James Houston, he's a proponent of that is a really good system as well. But to me, those are the two big ones that I think that are really could be a game changer. And honestly, if you look at a lot of the big software companies out there, those are the methods that they're doing. That's what they're implementing in their programs, if you look at it overall.
Awesome. And how do you approach it if a company is, maybe, half their company is doing more of the maintenance or even lawn care, and the other half is doing maybe some hardscape install based work. Um, does that estimating method differ based on each, or is it similar but just with a couple different adjustments?
So it's very similar. The way we take a look at it is we can break your business up. So we look at kind of the overhead that goes into the lawn maintenance side of things versus the overhead that's involved into the design build side of things. And we can create those overhead costs based on each one of those divisions in your business. And that'll adjust your overhead recovery percentage that you need to charge for that. So we look at that, and again, then everything's time based. So we break it down into, your 36-inch lawnmower can mow so many square feet per hour. So again, we're looking at time. So we have a property that takes, 1 hour to mow. Well, this mower could do this in so much time, then we can charge for that. And then adding that overhead percentage to it. Same thing with the design build. It's, your materials, we're adding up your materials, adding up your equipment, your labor, your overhead, and then you have a break even number, then you have your profit on top of that, and that's where you need to know. So yeah, it's very similar, but everything is just, in our program, we actually have sheets that are designed specifically for mowing, ones are specifically designed for landscaping, so it makes it very streamlined go through. But it is very similar.
Very nice. Yeah, and I think it would be, even going back to your initial comment there, Scott, about how companies really almost reach a breaking point, right, with their financials. And I think the whole goal of listening to podcasts like this, or reaching out to Scott and utilizing resources, is so that you don't have to hit that breaking point
Yeah. Yes.
financially, right? Because um, I think that there are a lot of things out there, right, that people can be taking advantage of. Now, when companies are able to kind of get to that point, right, where they might have clarity into what their accounting data is showing them, and then they're able to actually turn that into a profitable estimate, right, an accurate estimate. Now, the whole other aspect, and I know we spoke briefly before the call here, Scott, in regard to how do you then approach the customer, right? Where in the past you were probably pricing work almost at a break even and probably winning 80% of the jobs, 90% of the jobs, whereas now your close ratio might go down. So that's a big mental shift. But I guess, do you have any comments in regard to that?
It is. It's absolutely a mental shift. Um, so that's one thing we found is yes, we can start teaching you how to price your work appropriately, but then you go to sell it and you're like, I'm losing jobs. Well, a couple things, then you need to learn how to become a better salesperson. And everybody I talk to, I'm a great salesperson. I'm a great salesperson. Well, there's things you can do to improve on it. Trust me, I'm going through a program myself to become better sales. Like we can all become better at sales. So we actually added a part of our program, a sales component. So you learn how to price, now you learn how to sell it. And a lot of it too, it comes into play with being confident in your numbers and confident. When you know your break even number, it makes a huge game changer because when you go talk to Mrs. Smith and tell her that we're going to install this patio for X amount of dollars, and then she's like, oh, I have somebody who can do it for thousands of dollars less. Well, if you know your break even number, you can be like, are we comparing the same type of product here, same type of service, same size, what have you? And you can start questioning things and you start to get more information from that customer. And then if they are the same, I can tell you example. I sold one just on the time alone. So I started comparing the product. It was pretty much the same type of product, pretty much close to the same type of brick and everything. So I was like, you know what, Mrs. Smith, how long did they say it's going to take to install this patio or this sidewalk, I should say? And she told me, and I don't know exactly, but it was like, we'll say it's a day. It's like, really, with our team to come and do it properly, to install the right base, which is the key thing. Like, you don't want to put you're going to spend all this money. We want to make sure our base is right. Well, it's going to take us whatever, 2 days or whatever it was. It was more time than the other person. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, well, and here's why. And I started explaining the kind of the structure of how we build our patios and how it's going to make it last. And we offer a 5-year warranty and all this stuff. But I would have never known that if I would have probably lost that job right then and there if I just told them, well, I can either gone down or I said no, but I know that break even points. That was like a huge thing for me. Once I like thought about that after that sale, I'm like, holy cow, now I know my break even. I can tell the customer no, or we can try to figure out how to resolve it and how we can sell it a different manner. So yeah, it does take a mindset shift as far as you and how to do it, and how to sell it. But it can be done. Like we've been doing it for years that way. People have been selling it this way. It's getting the right customer or telling the customer no, and here's why. So it can be done. Trust me. Like there's plenty of work out there. People say there's not enough. There's plenty of work.
Yeah, and I think if companies are feeling like there's not enough work, maybe it's the marketing, right? Maybe they need to, really dial in there and just get more leads coming into the funnel. What are you seeing companies do in regard to marketing and bringing in business? Are they relying a lot on word of mouth, or what are you seeing there?
Well, that's the biggest thing. We hear so many people say word of mouth. Um, to me, I call it networking. It's really getting out there, and it's kind of I shouldn't say old school. It's been around forever, but getting out there and getting in front of people and building that trust in the community. And to me, that's the biggest thing is getting your name out there and just doing good for people. Like I recommend getting into different gardening clubs or getting into pond clubs or whatever out there, getting into your local chamber of commerce, just getting out there and talking to people and explaining things. And you're not selling to these people necessarily. You're just become an educator, and then people start seeing you as the professional in the area. Oh, I have this problem. I have this problem, and it's this big ball of things that just starts rolling up. Um, the other thing that we've been pushing people on is just some of the basic things as far as marketing and Google Business Profile. Like that's a huge one. So when people go type in landscaper near me or what landscaper near your city or town, they're going to either see on Google or Bing, whatever search platform, the local pack. So we recommend starting with that. That's a basic thing you can do, and that's a service we provide, but it's something that you can do yourself, and it's easy way to market. You have to do some of the basic stuff to set that outline to get that funnel going, to get those people coming in. But yeah, most of the time it's word of mouth, or like I said, I call it marketing, or I'm sorry, networking.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Even your other comment in regard to being an educator in your community, in regard to the services that you're providing, and how it could potentially help the community as well. Awesome stuff. And now, in regard to the administrative side of the business, I feel that a lot of companies have really mastered their methods in the field, right? Maybe laying down patios or, when they're doing some of the lawn care work. But administratively speaking, maybe the processes and systems, maybe even some of the technology lacking, right? Now, and I'm curious to kind of hear some of your thoughts, Scott, and kind of what you're seeing and maybe any recommendations you have for kind of running the administrative side of the landscape company.
Yeah, so that's a great point. Yeah, people they what seems to happen, they start out, everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people start off in the field doing the work, and then they have to start selling more. So then they start, well, I can't be on the job site as much because I have to be selling. So you have to set your team up to win, and this goes for the admin side or everything. And in order to do that is creating the systems and procedures that the team knows exactly how to do things over and over without you being there, without them having to call you every 5 minutes and say, how do I do this? How do I do that? And the only way to doing that is through training and having the systems procedures in place. And I'm not saying you have to go write, 100-page paper on how to install a patio. Like we had a paper, I should say paper, but a procedure. I think it was 4 pages long on just how to install a paper patio. Most of our team knew exactly how to do it, but if they had a question, they can refer back to that instead of calling me. Once you're able to get their team kind of on board, then you can start working on creating systems for sales and how to respond to customers. How to keep up with your AR, your account receivable, to make sure you're getting paid on time. There's a lot of things you can start doing, and a lot of it to me goes back to having the system procedures. We had a response time expectation procedure in our business. So when a customer calls, we were to respond to them within 24 hours. Just having those little things set up. So when you start growing or having, you bring in a secretary or whoever, admin assistant, whatever you want to call them, having those things so they know exactly what to do and things just start falling in place. I'm a huge fan of a free tool. It's called Asana for organization. Anybody can use it. There is a free version. There's a paid version, but honestly, most businesses get by with just using the free version, going through and outlining all the steps. Literally, how do you answer the phone? What should that person say? What do you expect from them to do? What to do when a customer's late on their payment? How do you handle that? And just to give you an example, I know Jobber is really good. Jobber has like some things in there that automate those things. Well, that's good, but there's things you need to be doing. To me, is getting on the phone and calling them and contacting them rather than just letting it go. Oh, 30 days went by. Oh, another 60 days. Yeah, but the software's sending reminders. Well, it's great, but you're not getting a response to that. What do you need to do on the back end of it? So having those procedures in place on how to actually call them and what to do and how to document that. So when the next timeline comes up, you're getting on the phone. Hey, Mrs. Smith, it looks like you were 30 days past due. We said we're expected to get paid this day. When can we expect payment next? And you document that, having it written down. To me, that's a huge thing. And this could be done paper, it could be done using a CRM program, whatever it is, but there needs to be some kind of way to document and follow up. Like I hear people say that, software is expensive. Yeah, it can be, but what's it going to save you on the back end? Could you be getting those payments, collected in the right time? Could you be calling back customers in a right timely manner? So there's a lot of things that can be done, but yeah, it's usually the progress we see from people from going out in the field to becoming full-time kind of business owners. You have to have these things in place. Otherwise, you're going to be putting out fires all day long and just jumping from this. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can design a business however you want, but you have to spend the time creating these. And don't get swept up that, or I guess don't get overwhelmed with, I have to do all these things. Just do a little bit of time. You can have your team create these procedures that happen out in the field. But, you can use software like Loom to go record how to make the invoice and on QuickBooks or whatever. There's so many things out there. Take advantage of the softwares and programs that are out there that are relatively low cost or no cost at all.
No, those are great points, Scott. And I think even going back to your first point, I think a lot of business owners, they expect that their administrative team is going to handle a certain aspect of or a certain function, but they haven't even relayed what the expectation is
Yes.
to that employee, right? And they and they didn't draw that clear picture for them, right? So I think that's the first step, and I think you nailed it right on the head there. Now, as for tech stack, I heard you mention Asana, Loom. I know is great for recording some of the videos for the team. Whether it's CRMs, project management softwares, anything else, I guess any other recommendations in regard to a tech stack for a landscape company?
I mean, there's so many different types of software out there as far as, and let me step back here, I guess. A CRM, I think there's some confusion and actually what a CRM is. We all know it's customer relationship management, but they kind of confuse a lot of things. And like Jobber is good with certain things, but it just, in my opinion, not Jobber. Jobber has a lot of great features, but Jobber just kind of stores information in there. It doesn't necessarily tell you you needed to call this customer back. They're getting better at theirs. They're adding more and more features in there. But a true CRM is a great tool to have because it's going to remind you to call Mrs. Smith because you gave an estimate last week on this, or to follow up with this customer because they're behind our payments. So true CRM should be able to do those things for you. And there's a lot of great ones out there. HubSpot is a free one that's out there, or there's a free version, I guess you get started with. I'm a huge fan of less annoying CRM because it's just very basic. That's what most people need. They don't need all the high end stuff, at least to start off with. But to me, having a good quality CRM is good. But then having like something like QuickBooks, that's you need to have the accounting program. And if you want to have Jobber, you need to have both of those. You can't just have one or the other. That's one thing I see. Well, I have Jobber. Well, what about, can you print off the P&L? Well, no. Well, you have to have QuickBooks as well, or some kind of accounting software with Oracle or whatever it is. QuickBooks to me is just one of the easiest and most commonly used. I imagine, is that something you see as well?
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, well, I already have Yardbook.
Yes.
Do I need
Yes.
QuickBooks? So, I think it's important to have like a balance sheet, right?
Yes.
Have an accounting software like QuickBooks. There's really not a replacement to it. I mean, most companies in the green industry use QuickBooks when it
Yeah.
comes to the accounting side. So, but yeah, definitely, Scott, it's a very common thing that we see. Um, Another point you had made, Scott, which I thought was pretty interesting in regard to, especially when there's collections, right, from clients, picking up the phone and calling them, right, trying to find different ways to solve issues, and especially with things that are going to impact cash flow like collections, putting the priority towards something like that. A company is not going to go out of business because of maybe a small error they made in the field. Most likely they're going to go out of business because of cash flow issues, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot more likely. So I thought that was a great point. um, and I guess, as we wrap up here, Scott, any other things you'd like to, whether it's advice or guidance that you'd like to leave with the community?
Just really take the time to reach out to have a good accountant. And this is one thing that I love about Cycle CPA. They will educate you. I can tell you from firsthand experience, when we had our original accountant that my parents used for years, I went there to ask for help. They didn't explain things in a certain way. They didn't, and I didn't know this till later on in my life, but they didn't explain things very well, and they didn't educate me. Well, you need to do this because of this, or how to do this. They just said, "Oh, raise your prices." Well, okay, but that doesn't help me. They didn't explain anything. My numbers didn't make sense. The other thing that I'm finding out now as a business coach is a lot of times, a lot of the accountants that are not green industry specific don't necessarily have their P&Ls and all everything's kind of laid out in a manner that you can actually look at the P&L and understand what is going on in your business. Because that's what it is. It's all about numbers and understanding how to do it, and it affects everything in your business. So if you don't have a good accountant, don't have your books in order, it makes it very difficult to estimate properly. It makes it very difficult to make financial decisions of whether you can go hire a new employee or you can go buy that new piece of equipment. And people just make a decision, I'm going to go buy that piece of equipment just off the top of their head. And it didn't make financially sense at the time, but they didn't know any better because they're not looking at the numbers. So honestly, go get a good accountant and have them go through and set it up, and really go through with I recommend a green industry consultant or accountant, because they know how everything should be laid out. Uh, the other thing too, I see, if they use a local accountant and they'll get advice from them on how to price their work, it's not necessarily in my opinion, they understand like how to set it up for like a manufacturing type of business, but not necessarily the service industry business, which is a different pricing model than. So that's one nice thing with a green industry accountant like yourselves. They understand how to price it and set it up in a manner that you can actually make business or money in the business rather than just setting up like a, because we're not doing the same thing over and over. A manufacturer producing this widget the same way over to
Yeah.
over, day in, day out. We're not. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing, everything's different. So you have to have a different pricing model and structure. So having a good accountant to help you set up your business. And then once you do that, then you can start understanding numbers and price it the way it needs to be. And that's where it's nice. Like when we work together, like things that I push you guys a lot because you have to have a good base. And now we can take that base and good information and create an estimating system, because once you know your numbers, it makes a huge difference. I can attest for myself and the hundreds of landscapers we worked with that have gone through our program and used it. It's a night and day difference in how they can, make a comfortable life and have a comfortable life and go take vacation, do what they want, buy that piece of equipment, whatever that is. But until they know those numbers, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely the foundation there. And once they do have that foundation, the numbers, I guess, do you mind telling us a little bit about what's in the $1 Million Landscaper
Sure.
program?
So I guess one thing I'll share, because this is a common question I get asked, for what is the $1 Million Landscaper? Well, how, why do we call ourselves? In our landscape business, we ran our business between $1 to $2 million a year. That's what we ran. We knew it. We were profitable. We were able to have a comfortable life. Sure, we could have gone bigger, but we didn't want to. We were comfortable where we were at. So I know the $1 million range. That's why we call ourselves a $1 million landscaper, because I know that. I know the systems that need to be in place. That's kind of what we call it. But my wife Katie and I, we decided 5 years ago now that we wanted to start helping other landscapers. We were doing it kind of on the side, helping landscapers out here and there that were near us with trying to charge and adding systems. Like, you know what, this is something I really want to do, give back to the industry, because I had a lot of people give to me and help me out. So I kind of want to give back. So we started our $1 Million Landscaper program. We started teaching people these estimating programs and how to estimate their work based on their numbers, not the going rate. So we started adding that. Then we started adding different systems and procedures that are in there that are done for you. You can just kind of copy and paste them, make a few adjustments here and there to fit your business, but it's all kind of done in for you. So we have basically what's called our Profits Up estimating program, which is our main estimating program. You're going to learn to estimate, how to estimate. You're going to learn some sales. And then we have our Inner Circle, which is more so a mastermind, if you will. And we get together a few times a month. We talk about whatever. And then we also have different systems procedures that we give you and we talk about in these masterminds to help get things in order. So we can get you started with the numbers. Then we have our Inner Circle. We also just recently started doing some stuff with marketing, just as far as like Google Business Profile, just very basic stuff. We also started a landscape marketing club, so social media. Just again, it's all the basic stuff that we need to be doing, but it's kind of done for you. So that's kind of what we have inside of our program.
Very nice. No, that's great stuff. Well needed in the industry, and Scott, we really appreciate you taking the time here to kind of go through some of the important points, right? And I hope everyone was taking some good notes. But thanks again, Scott.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having us on. Excited to be on here.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
See ya.